Welcome to episode 24 of Why Not Read Alpha Flight, a podcast where we take your favorite series seriously. I'm Chris Baker.
And I'm Tom Flynn. We are recording this in March of 2025 as Canada heads towards a snap election. With Mark Carney in as the new PM and the polls tightening significantly amidst the U.S.'s unconscionable actions against its neighbor to the north, Canada, we love you so much. This is the best choice that great nation could make in the wake of Trudeau's resignation.
All right, Tom, I'm going to let you finish, but what are you talking about? And folks, we just cut out a whole bunch of Canadian politics stuff. And if you want to hear that, you can stick around after the credits and hear Tom explain what's going on for those of us who don't live there.
It is a time of change and confusion in Canada. So let's escape to the sensible soap opera that is Alpha Flight, which is all change and confusion right now.
That's right, folks. We are embarking on the Mantlo era with the first real issue of the run that isn't tied to the plot threads directly left by John Byrne's departure. As I said last episode, Mantlo clearly has a direction he wants to take the book, and I'm excited to see where it goes.
The story so far. Who cares? New writer, new editor, new artist. This book is not what it used to be. Mantlo will not be following any of the conventions this book has established, and that's not necessarily a bad thing because Bill Mantlo doesn't follow the rules. You know, he's a wild card.
He's a loner, Dottie, a rebel.
So, I mean, how different are things? We don't even get the traditional opening splash page anymore. It's a 2-panel page. And just a thing to kind of remark on, and this is both, frankly, partially because Byrne was writing and, drawing the book, but there's a real different scaling to the book now than during Byrne's run. Maybe scope is a better word for what I'm talking about, because I'm really kind of reflecting on the landscape. It all felt grander and just bigger during Byrne's run. And that scaling, that placement really informed the pacing of the issues and the storytelling.
I hadn't realized it, but you're right. We didn't get any of those beautiful, wide nature shots that Byrne would give us. I don't think we saw trees other than as an afterthought. There were no happy little trees in this story, Tom.
No happy trees. Well, I mean, to be fair, those happy trees were almost always, taken out by Walt. But, they were happy for a moment and they were dead. But
they were happy till they were used to spit roast the Wendigo.
Jesus. One Mantlo convention that is immediately noticeable is his rather strict 3-act structure. These books are all the standard 24 pages of story, and as you read them, you realize that every 8 pages, the story ratchets forward.
I gotta say, it's been a challenge to write this script up because it's just so different from what we've been reading. Like, we're recording this later in our cycle than we would prefer to, listeners, because that's all on me, not on Tom. Tom, you have done nothing wrong in your life. I know this about you, and I love you. Aww. The issue we're covering today, number 30, was on the newsstand the same month as the first X-Men and Alpha Flight limited series issue. So, pretend you're a 13-year-old Canadian in November 1985. You read Alpha Flight number 29, all excited to see the Hulk, and because you're a kid and you don't read the boring editor pages, blah, blah, blah. So you miss Byrne's goodbye note. Then a classic Canadian blizzard delays the mail, and your small fishing and logging village is cut off from civilization for 5 weeks. When you finally get your sled dug out in January and gassed up and head into the totally real city of Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan to get your comics fix, you walk into the shop, and Alpha Flight is unrecognizable.
This is all an aggressive guess at best. I'm kind of reeling from that whole scenario. I mean,
well, see, Tom, you didn't buy issues like monthly growing up, but as a kid, yeah, this would happen. Like, you as a 12-year-old would show up at your comic shop all ready for your next issue, and you pick it up, and you're like, "What's going on?" I mean, it's like when X Factor suddenly turned into the Ecstatics with like no explanation. Like, you pick up the issue and go, "What the fuck? This isn't the book I've been reading."
I love the idea that this is when you start cursing. Is that?
Oh yeah,
some of your first profanity and most creative profanity happens when someone decides to change up the comic that you've been like studiously reading and aggressively collecting for the last like 4 years with what money you actually have in this world. Yeah, that's pretty great.
If A Christmas Story was made today, Ralphie would be sitting on the can and he would say, "It's a fucking commercial." I said last issue that Mantlo deployed some deft steering and hard braking to change direction without losing momentum, and he did it without crashing into anything. So, bravo, Bill. We're going somewhere. We haven't hit any walls. Those walls come next issue.
With the new writer aggressively laying out his vision for the book, there is a fair bit of telling readers what they need to know in the characters' dialogue and thought balloons. There are very few narration boxes and no narrator voice in this issue.
I noticed after I had written this up that there aren't a lot of quotes from characters in here because there's just so many quotes. And once you start, doing that, it becomes nothing but us putting on a really bad radio play. Which, you know what, guys? If you want to chip in and you want to fund it, we will put on the absolute worst radio play of whatever issue you pick.
With that said, listeners, let's get down to what we're here for. Alpha Flight number 30, cover date January 1986, titled Enter Scramble. Writer Bill Mantlo, pencils Mike Mignola, inks Gerry Talaoc, letterers Jim Novak, colors Bob Sharen, editor Carl Potts.
And Jim Shooter as editor-in-chief. I just didn't type it in there. This is still the Shooter era. The cover features all the currently active Alphans because Mantlo is writing this as a team book, so the team is and will be together from here on out. We have the speedster twins North Star and Aurora, the giant robotic box armor, and Puck, the hirsute acrobatic dwarf in a unitard, all back-to-back facing off against a mass of monstrous figures. Among the baddies stands a figure in a weird outfit. It's hard to describe, and it doesn't actually matter, but we're here to talk about this stuff, and it's weird. Tom.
Yeah, he looks like a spy plane pilot, like if an SR-71 pilot was heading to a BDSM club. There's a helmet and a flight suit with the arms tucked into its gloves and the face is fully covered.
He looks like a G.I. Joe action figure. Because I had the G.I. Joe SR-71 and it was awesome.
Yeah, well, he looks like a G.I. Joe action figure that they immediately discontinued.
One of those custom ones they made when you fill in the card and mail it in.
Oh, I remember that.
Me too! Oh.
Having accepted the Canadian government's offer to bankroll them, Alpha Flight is finally setting up a home base at the remote Tamarind Island, the ancestral family mansion of secret agent superhero Dr. Walter Langowski, who is currently dead.
I have a thought here. Tamarind Island was first brought up back in issue number 17. I think the island was given to the Canadian government by the Langowski family before Alpha Flight was disbanded by the government, and Alpha Flight couldn't use it until they got back under the control of the Canadian federal government. Now that I think about it, I bet Walt arranged the transfer to maximize his tax write-off or sold it to him at some crazy markup because he's like, guys, I got this real estate for you.
I mean, that's a really great theory, and I really appreciate you leading into the kind of character Walt had. But it is said in the comic that, by Gerry Cody that they claimed it via eminent domain.
So wait, after he dies, they steal his land? Walt doesn't even live to see how bad things can get. He just doesn't... Fuck! That guy lived a charmed life and threw it away to turn himself into a monster.
I do love the idea that the government just absolutely ganked his shit. That's just chef's kiss. I mean, colonizers gonna get colonized.
The dildo of colonization rarely arrives lubed.
Oh, dear Lord.
Alpha Flight's Canadian government liaison Gerry Cody remarks to Alpha Flight team leader, the totally human Heather Hudson, the new administration has finally accepted the reality that, like the superheroes of the United States, Alpha Flight can play a strategically important role in Canada's defense plan.
To which Heather replies, and like the Fantastic Four and the Avengers do in the US, we'll defend Canada because it is our home. Elbows up. She doesn't say that part, but I thought I'd throw it in there.
You're right. It's absolutely perfect. Well, Puck thinks, still, it's a bit easier to keep an eye on individuals as unpredictable as those in Alpha Flight when you sign their paychecks. Perhaps they cannot be blamed for wanting to keep us under observation, though. After all, we nearly cost Canada Vancouver when we accidentally brought the Hulk there. Yet another reason to relocate us to this isolated island.
I mean, where's the lie? Heather thinks, am I leading Alpha Flight as you would have, Mac? If Guardian hadn't died, would Alpha still have lost Sasquatch, Talisman, Shaman, and Marina?
Listeners, that is 3 founding Alphans who have left the team and 2 who died, counting Mac. So, of our original 8, our 08, we have only 3 left. Speedster twins, North Star and Aurora, and hirsute dwarf in a unitard, Eugene Judd, a.k.a. Puck. And if you recall, way back in, I think it was episode number 4, when we questioned whether Mac making the decision to become a superhero with his helmet was a good decision or not. And I said at the time, I think it would have been better for literally everyone we meet in the rest of this book if Mac had never embarked upon this journey. And I'm just taking this moment here to say there were 8. Now there's 3.
Personally, I'm just glad someone remembered Marina.
Oh no, I'm pulling that together. What's Marina been up to? Oh yeah, we're going to get there, guys. So lots of scene-setting narration as we get going. Byrne would have used a single page and narration boxes well scripted to efficiently get us where we need to be. Byrne put on a show with each issue, while Mantlo is telling us who the characters are now and what motivations we will see get played out in the future.
Heather thinks, I feel I can rely more on Snowbird than I can on Northstar and Aurora. The death of Walter Langowski has drawn them closer to each other than ever, only to find that they can no longer touch without negating their powers. So my super team consists of those depressed twins, an absentee goddess, a pain-racked dwarf, me with no powers, and a legless cripple who can't stay inside his robot armor without becoming a part of it. Holy shit!
Yeah, who is this? What?
Here we are on page 2, and once again, we have to use the C word in relation to Box because that is how Mantlo has the character see him. That's how Mantlo sees him. It's jarring, y'all.
And putting it in Heather's words, that's not cool, Bill. Like, that's not cool.
And then a page later, Puck will think,
Roger Box hates his handicap as much as I hate mine. Okay, every one of Puck's quotes is now trying to sound like he's trying to fuck somebody.
Yeah, that's accurate.
Because Puck fucks.
So, small point of order. When Aurora speaks, she has a phonetically spelled out accent. It is like an accent written by Chris Claremont, but nowhere near as endearing. Which is something Northstar comments on by thinking, just remembering her late lover, Walter Langowski, tips Aurora into her insecure John Marie persona. Exclamation point.
I count 11 exclamation points on this page alone.
The last time we saw the mansion on Tamarind Island, it was completely gutted down to bare wood after Walt and Aurora confronted and defeated Walt's great-great-aunt Gilded Lily, an accomplished alchemist who wanted to take extra care to pose Aurora before coating her in gold to live all eternity as Lily's golden statue.
The images I have seen of this on DeviantArt will haunt me to my grave.
Alpha Flight, assisted by the Canadian military of some sort, is moving their gear in to trick out the mansion as a proper super team base, with a ready room and a hangar and all the stuff the Fantastic Four and Avengers get. A small scuffle breaks out when the military guys refuse to install some unapproved machinery Roger and Jeffries brought to the new HQ. Heather gets in Gary Cody's face and says, despite reservations, I took you at your word when you said Alpha'd be free from government interference. No strings means no strings. We won't be answerable to Ottawa or anyone else. We're to be given total autonomy, complete authority to take the government's funding and use it as we deem necessary. Absolute privacy in all we do, or Alpha Flight goes back to being free agents. One of the few narration boxes says, there is a second's astonished silence, and then a military guy says, you're the boss, lady.
Heather brings the heat! And Mantlo built some tension. Good job, Bill! In this scene, Jeffries lets slip that he has a little brother, and Heather makes note of it because she says,
I personally keyed all the data Matt gave me about Mr. Jeffries into, seriously, Chris?
Yeah, it's on the page, Tom. You gotta read it like it's written.
Alpha Nex, Alpha Flight's computer, and I never came across any mention of his having a younger brother.
We now have on-page confirmation that Mac was relying on Heather to do his admin work in the Department H days. When we first met Heather, she was working for the Amcan Oil Company, and then, when Mac is still employed by the government, she had a different boss. He had a name. It was Mr. Something or other. I believe at a different oil company, she expressly did not work for Mac or Department H before his death.
But that reference to her job and boss was a one-off, so maybe it's being retconned away the same way I wish Alpha Nex had been retconned away as the name for their system, because that's just a dumb name.
You know, this show was almost named Alpha Nex.
Guys, it absolutely was not. That was never going to be an option. I would have walked and you wouldn't be listening to us.
Oh, no, it would have been perfect, but We've got plans.
That ends page 8 of the book. So Mantlo's 3-act formula means we now scene change to the sad, spare home of Royal Canadian Mounted Police Corporal Doug Thompson and his lady love, Anne Mackenzie, aka Naria, aka Snowbird, hundreds of miles away in the district of Mackenzie, Northwest Territory.
After slinking away from Alpha Flight last issue, Dr. Michael fucking Two Youngman, aka Shaman, is saying goodbye to his friends as he embarks on a pilgrimage to the land of his ancestors to get right. But this is just a one-page interlude to keep from just dropping these characters out of the book. Meanwhile, back at the mansion, Heather does a lot of thought bubble defining and explaining of the Alphans around her.
This is where it really feels like Mantlo is telling us what we need to know about these characters and their momentum and direction as far as he sees it. Northstar and Aurora are both grieving the dear departed secret agent superhero linebacker Dr. Walter Langowski.
Tom, when you pointed out last episode that you immediately saw the weirdness in Northstar's sudden grief, I thought it was a stretch, and I didn't want to undercut your enthusiasm, but here it is again, plain as day. I saw some listeners commented to this effect as well, so I guess I'm just being too naive about this issue.
Yeah, it sucks. The totally human Heather is... Oh man, I hate saying that. The totally human Heather is concerned about her role in the team and wants to acquire enough power to justify it.
I'd say she just flexed her power on the military guys. She is interesting and effective as she is, but oh, wait, we're not doing the thunder and organ sound effect gag anymore. Damn it, it'd be perfect here. Now, Puck, this is a bit more nuanced. Heather checks in on a sleeping Puck, and he is racked with pain and sweating, but Heather thinks,
he's consumed by some pain that goes back way before any data I've seen even starts keeping track of the history of Eugene Judd.
So, Mantlo read Alpha Flight number 5 and knows Puck is always in pain, but right away is taking this bit in a very different direction. He ignores that issue's clear as day explanation of Puck's pain and instead turns it into a mystery here. Had this not happened here in the Alpha Flight book proper, I could have let Claremont's foreshadowing of this in the limited series slide.
Heather walks into the basement lab and catches Roger Box and Madison Jeffries in a compromising position.
Get your head out of the gutter, listener, because I know it's there because I live there.
Yeah, I don't think Jeffrey even swings that way.
Oh, no. I mean, maybe the wheelchair counts for him.
Jesus fucking Christ.
They are trying to recreate the powered battlesuit that killed Alpha Flight founder James McDonald, Jimmy Ladd, Major Maple Leaf, JMH Hudson. And for some reason, while working on the complex electronic suit, they have an old Guardian costume draped over it. The book went out of its way to tell us the cloth we see is just cloth and the real suit is circuitry underneath. Why would they essentially Weekend at Bernie's their boss's dead husband like this?
Heather, for her part, is intrigued at the thought of Alpha having a new suit to make use of, but...
Okay, yeah, she's intrigued after she freaks out.
Yes.
There is a freak out.
There's more than a justifiable one at that.
When Heather opens a door and sees a Guardian suit on the other side of it, it's just PTSD. Bam!
Yeah, Heather ain't okay. While intrigued at the thought of a new suit to make use of, much like her departed husband, she's kind of concerned about the danger in so doing. She considers whether Jeffries would be the right person to wear the suit and goes to their computer mainframe, the AlphaNex, to find out more about Alpha's newest member. She finds that Jeffries' family history is in a locked file, but it's JMH's lock, so she knows the code to open it because, well, he was the worst at administrative work and she was the best at it.
Apparently, this is when Heather first learned that Jeffrey's first name is Madison. Though we, the reader, knew that already, I guess he's just been Mr. Jeffries to Alpha Flight till now. But Heather said she had entered in all the data Mac had about him. She must have typed this in the first name field, which is capitalized like it would be in any, spreadsheet, because we've all done it, right? Sloppy work, Bill. John. Whoever, sloppy.
The newly unlocked file tells her that Madison's little brother is named Lionel. He is a surgeon and he is in Montreal. So Heather uses the team's new Omnijet to head over there and see if Lionel has any superpowers. So Chris, because I'm me, I got curious if there's anything I could figure out regarding the Jeffries boys' names, and all I came up with is Lionel Electric Trains had a Madison passenger car, which is barely something more than nothing, but I did the looking, so now I'm talking about it.
Anyway, Heather just jets off to see if Lionel has powers. That's her goal. She doesn't ask Madison, she just flies hundreds of miles to go ask some dude what's up.
I do all that work and you just talk right on past it.
Arriving at the Montreal hospital, she is surprised to find that Lionel is not an employee here, but a patient who has never before received a visitor.
Okay, wait. She's looking to possibly recruit someone to Alpha Flight, and she's shocked that they're a patient in a hospital and not like a doctor or something, not an employee. She knows who all these people are. They're more likely a patient. They're more likely in jail than they are like doing something reputable in the world. Anyway.
You know, she at least has some more background and experience in this than JMH did. Can you imagine how incredibly naive and awful he was at finding these people? Like, there will be flashbacks and stuff that come back to those very earliest days, so we will get to talk about that later. But, you know, I will say that Heather is doing better than her dead husband. She is led down to the basement, where a very secure, padded room holds Lionel dressed like a kinky SR-71 pilot, our bad guy from the cover.
As Heather explains she is a friend of his brother and tries to talk to him, he lunges his face forward and touches her hand with the only skin not covered by his restraints and yells, "Thank you, friend of my brother, for setting Scramble free!"
Once again, Tom. Lovely. The rest of the team, wondering why Heather took their only jet with no explanation, arrives at the hospital just in time. I mean, at least it was Heather. It wasn't like North Star who took the jet, because that would really screw them.
I could totally see him doing that. I love that so much.
The rest of the team arrives at the hospital just in time to see horribly mutated monstrosities pouring out of the hospital. True to form, North Star immediately wants to fight and kill them all, but Puck points out the monsters are wearing torn hospital clothes, and they must be the staff and patients of the hospital.
Cue Madison Jeffries with the exposition page to end Act 2 and move us into Act 3. While Madison's power is to shape metal to his will, Lionel's power is to shape flesh to his will.
Flesh. You.
Madison resented his power and grew moody, while Lionel embraced his and became a gifted surgeon.
Now that I think about it, I'm sure that he and Shaman have met. Like, Shaman must have heard something about this, right?
Maybe. I don't know. I mean, look.
It's a small world.
It is a small... it is a small world. However, based on timelines, this might have been during Shaman's 10-year fuck off, I'm going to ruin my my relationship with my daughter period. So there's a good chance he didn't, actually. But
one more no prize to you, Tom. Good job.
It is not said in this issue, but Byrne has said that Madison is a mutant, so it follows that. So it's his brother.
The brothers are Canadian, but they volunteer for the American Army to go fight in Vietnam, which really makes me question whether Jeffries should be trusted to make decisions about anything.
While in Vietnam, their whole unit got exploded, and Lionel snapped. Unable to save them, he began trying to make the dead live again until Madison wrapped him in metal, brought him to Montreal, and stuck him in the basement like 10 years ago-ish.
I still wonder, like, okay, so they're in Vietnam. He's got his crazy brother encased in metal. How does Madison transport his brother safely back over to Canada and get him ensconced? Like, just the logistics of it. Madison apparently is a very resourceful man.
I'm just going to say, picking at these threads during the Mantlo run might be the path to madness.
Yes, absolutely. It is Cthulhu all the way down. The team pushes through the horrors in the hospital and bursts into the basement padded cell to find Heather lying on the ground, horribly twisted and deformed by Lionel's power.
One arm and leg is normal, while the other arm is stretched to the length of her body and has added mass, and she has spikes on her back. And guys, it looks horrific. It was not terribly long ago that Heather was very badly wounded by Marina's Plodex mate. I can see Mantlo raising the stakes for her to show why she should get superpowers, but this feels like cheap body horror.
The art is really where Mignola shines in this issue, though. The monstrosities that Scramble is producing, that really leans into what Mignola brings to the page, and he really emphasizes how traumatizing this is for Heather.
I mean, I'll also say on his art, even earlier in the issue with the military moving the equipment in, his art looks far more engaged in this issue than it did in the last. I like this style, although I guess we only get him for like 2 more issues or something.
1.
Oh, crap.
The team rushes to find Lionel while Puck stays behind with Heather, saying, "There, my angel. Easy. Puck will not leave you," while holding her face in his hands. So, that's a plot point that's barreling down the tracks towards us.
Hearing you say my angel in the Puck voice is going to haunt me.
Oh, I'm going to make that into a ringtone for your phone. Every time I text you, that's what you're going to hear.
Moving right along.
It's creepier the longer I think of it.
Moving right along, the twins fight monsters, and Aurora eventually checks out and slips into Jean-Marie.
Box searches for Scramble and turns the corner to see...
Oh dear, more of Scramble's handiwork, apparently composed of dozens of hospital personnel and patients, all merged in one Brobdingnagian body and eager to crack yours truly like a lobster out of its shell.
We have to react to that, Tom.
Yeah, I like the Gulliver's Travels reference there with Brobdingnagian, but
Oh, Tom, explain Brobdingnagian.
Oh,
that's
okay.
not Gulliver's Travels. Isn't that from Voltaire or something?
Nope.
Oh.
It's Gulliver's Travels. It's one of the islands that Gulliver ends up on. Gulliver's Travels is a satire by Swift, right? Yeah, Jonathan Swift, who was Irish. He also wrote an amazing satire called A Modest Proposal, which was skewering the English for their treatment of the Irish. And in it, he suggests that a good way for the Irish people to avoid starvation is just to start eating their own children. It's cutting. It's brilliant. It's good. Anyway, he also wrote Gulliver's Travels as a way of satirizing and discussing, in some ways, colonialism. He's an interesting guy. And Brobdingnag, I always butcher that one, is one of the islands that Gulliver, our hero, winds up on. This is the island of giants, though, whereas Lilliput, the one he went to first, was where he was the giant. Everyone else was like maybe an inch tall. It's weird. It's interesting. It's also really kind of random that it's just sort of dropped in like this. But hey, I guess, Bill was in law school. Maybe he had to read, some Swift. I don't know.
I don't think they make you read Swift in law school. They make you read Swift in the type of soft hand school we went to, Tom. Yeah, because listeners, none of this was scripted. Like, everything since the box quote has just been Tom spewing out what he knows about literature off the top of his head. No notes.
It happens. I don't know. It's possible they would make you read Swift, though, especially A Modest Proposal, because it is structured in some ways with legal language. Like, it's a logic argument, right? So it's possible. Unlikely. I grant you. Very unlikely, but possible. Moving right along, there's another really intimate and tender moment with Puck and Heather, but yeah, it feels pretty unearned and exploitative of Heather's condition, so that's all we're going to say about it.
Madison finds his brother. They have a big showdown. Lionel starts warping Madison's body, and Madison shoves Lionel's hands onto Lionel's own head, causing Lionel to fix his own brain.
There's a lot that could be said about this, but this is the longest one-issue episode we've ever recorded to date. I feel like that might be hubris of us to say that it's the longest, because who knows what's next. But just know this, listeners, we found this as silly and problematic as you probably did.
Yeah, so like by being in touch with Madison, he can see what a normal brain should be like, and then he uses his power to fix this, and there's a whole bunch about the physical cause of madness and
that's not to say that's not like a possibility. Sure. But
all right, I'm going to pick a nit, Tom. They did not say that he was injured in the Vietnam incident. They did not say there was a physical injury that Lionel needed to come in and use his power to physically rework his physically damaged brain.
Absolutely. I'm not disputing that or disagreeing with that. I'm just saying it's almost suggesting that he was able to alter back his neural pathways, but it doesn't make sense because it would just simply mean that he would have Madison's brain, not his own. It's just a deus ex.
This is why I tried to just gloss over this, because when we try to talk about it, we fall down into this pit of molasses.
You are the one that brought it up. All right?
I thought it would be fun. You can cut it out. You own the means of production, Tom.
This is
so
true.
Lionel, I guess, puts everyone back in order, including Heather. He's totally cured now. No hard feelings, although there is some resentment from Heather for, making her not beautiful, which it's so ugly, Tom. The story is so ugly, not Heather's body in this story. I'm not commenting upon your body, the totally human Heather Hudson, but you weren't totally human. Oh God, dig up, stupid.
As Scramble goes to thank Heather for being the root cause of his getting cured, I guess, he reaches out to wipe a tear from her face and then shakes her hand. Now, Bill, you could have shown Heather confidently shaking his hand and being the team leader, but instead you made her the cause of all of the problems. Sidelined her with physical deformity while she complains about not being beautiful anymore, then have the bad guy give her the most tender, non-sexual, intimate touch a man can give a woman, and then still had her shake his hand? Bill, I don't I can't. I just can't.
There's a couple of panels that set up the next issue, but we'll do that next time. For now, let's just sit back and reflect on everything.
One thing I kind of wanted to remark on, and it ties back to what you said, I think it was last episode, about how Jeffries has lived in the real world, how Jeffries has been disappointed, had to deal with struggle in a way that Walt didn't. Like, and Jeffries is almost slotting into a certain kind of role within the team. And yeah, like his experiences in Vietnam, having to put away his brother, like there is a lived experience to Madison Jeffries that's really interesting and in some ways more in line with like Shaman than Walt. Walt was almost the outlier on the team. Walt's trauma wasn't trauma the same way.
Walt was always the main character of his story.
Right.
And Madison hasn't been so far. Like, Madison has been, like, he hasn't felt like the main character in his life, whereas Walt has known his whole life that he is the main character. That's why he is secret agent superhero linebacker Dr. Walter Lankowski.
And it's nice. I mean, it makes sense that Mantlo would want to flesh out Jeffries even more, as he's kind of the least developed of the characters he's inheriting. But there's a way in which I'm not loving what he's doing with some of the other characters. He is staying true, I think, to a lot of what Byrne had kind of hinted at and set up with Jeffries. And I appreciate that. I do appreciate those choices that are going in there, even if I might have issues with some of the other choices going on.
Jeffries is clearly becoming a focal point of the issue or of the series. And I'm down with that, you know? It's somebody that we don't know nearly as much about. But really, we don't know much about Puck either. Like, the people that we know the most about are the people who have been sidelined.
Now, on the Vietnam point...
Yeah, that threw me for a loop, man. Like, why would you sign up for this?
There were apparently, and light research, somewhere north of 10,000 Canadians who went to the U.S. and joined the U.S. Army to go to Vietnam. And that was done for all sorts of reasons. Adventure, belief in, preserving capitalism, a lot of really weird reasons. The Canadian government kept out of the war. Canadian companies made a lot of money selling material and supplies to the U.S., but the official stance was that this was not a war to be involved in. Apparently, there was some bust up between the Prime Minister at the time and LBJ about a speech the Prime Minister gave that kind of implied that the war in Vietnam was relatively pointless.
And that pussy LBJ didn't immediately call him a governor and insist that Canada become the 51st state. Good Lord.
From what I read, got pretty close to that for LBJ. So I don't know. I mean,
I can actually see that from LBJ.
Is this completely out of nowhere? Like, is this this is something that did happen? There were Canadians that fought in Vietnam in the U.S. Army. Now, does Bill Mantlo know that? I don't know.
Piggybacking off of that, the way that the military is not defined, it's just, I think I counted like 11 helicopters that was moving stuff in. The way he treated the helicopter dialogue in the last issue, there's a lot of glossing over things to the way that Bill Mantlo tells stories that's different than what I find in most of my favorite stories.
One last point I'd like to, or at least a thing I'd like to bring up. It's been 2 issues. This is the first one kind of really kicking off the run in its own way, moving away from Byrne. Other than location, has this felt Canadian to you? Could you simply drop them in Phoenix or DC or something and have it be the same looking military, the same looking approach? Other than place names, I'm not really feeling a lot of Canada coming through here. And while Byrne didn't always crush that, he largely did. A lot of it was location, sure, but he also delved into Canadian politics, like some history there. And again, we're 1 issue in.
Well, no, I think that you bring up a very valid point here because that's intentional. That's what Mantlo wants to do, is to make this into Canadian Avengers. And that doesn't mean the Avengers if they lived in Canada. It means the Avengers just set in Canada. That's why we have a home techno base with schematics where we know where everyone's bedroom is now. And it's just not what we've been reading so far. And this is what we're doing now. And that's okay. I mean, this is reading comics.
So that wraps up issue 30 of Alpha Flight. Next episode will be focused almost entirely on issue 31.
Yeah, we're in for several episodes of single issues because Mantlo does a lot of telling and not showing, and there's a lot of changes for us to talk about.
And we're getting our feet under us. Once we're settled and once we have an idea of what the tropes are, how it's going to progress, and that's clear for everyone, we can get moving again. I do think that our 4 pillars of Alpha Flight, sex, death, team-ups, and failure may be a thing of the past, but
I think this is the first time we've had none of them.
Yeah, that's pretty rough.
I mean, their unit died in the past, which I guess is death. But yeah, that wasn't anybody's fault here, you know?
Also, lots of people have died in the past, so we can't... We have some listener mail. Justin Brown emailed us to say, all the Mantlo talk made me want to chime in with my opinion that the Hulk in the Crossroads dimension is actually a masterpiece. I highly recommend it. It takes up an entire epic collection conveniently titled Crossroads and reads really well in that format. I also feel the need to point out that World War Hulk started with a similar premise to Crossroads, by which I mean a bunch of Marvel Universe big brains got together and decided to exile the Hulk for his and everyone else's own good. I eagerly await the podcast delving further into the Mantlo era.
Justin, thank you very much. We're glad to hear that you're enjoying it and that you're along for the ride because, boy, we are eagerly awaiting delving further into the Mantlo era as well. Also, you know, it's become kind of a trope on our show to say that every Incredible Hulk story ends with,
and the Hulk leaps away.
You know, it's almost another level of trope with the Hulk to say, and the big brains exiled the Hulk.
When you write a character like the Hulk, eventually you run out of options for how to deal with them, right? So this is not totally shocking that that's how how he exits the scene in any capacity.
I'm going to put the why not shine on this for you, Tom. It gives writers the opportunity to put the Hulk into a new and unexpected scenario that doesn't have to stick to the conventions of fitting our reality in the 616. It opens up many new doors for storytelling without it being the same. The Hulk appears in a city and all the military guys shoot guns at him, despite that not ever working, not once in the history of guys shooting at the Hulk. And it makes some cool things happen, which is why we remember those stories, because that's where the cool stuff happens. But then you gotta back off from that. You gotta bring him back to Earth, make it grounded. Then you get a good grounded story, and then you go back and you get fucking Planet Hulk, which is amazing.
Yep. We also have a little bit of audio from some friends of the show. Our good friends, Rick and Jeff, over at the Unpacking the Power of Power Pack, also had some thoughts on their interaction with Bill Mantlo when he wrote a little bit of Power Pack. And because they are podcasters, they sent their mail by voice, which is an incredibly tortured way of saying, here's Rick and Jeff.
Jeff.
Yes.
How much do you remember Shelter from the Storm, the Power Pack Cloak and Dagger book that we did?
Oh, I do remember that. I think I recently deleted my link to it, though. I have good overviews over it, but not good feelings about it, Rick.
Yeah, that sounds about right. The reason I mention this is because our buddies over at Why Not Read Alpha Flight, they have decided that they are going to continue to read Alpha Flight even after they've gone through the John Byrne era, and they've started getting into the Bill Mantlo era. And as they were talking about Bill Mantlo, I remembered, hey, he's done a lot of stuff over at Marvel, including he has done some Power Pack. That's the Power Pack he did with Power Pack and Cloak and Dagger, where they go and they fight an evil, gross monster that is kidnapping a bunch of runaways. And it's a sad and depressing and annoying book that we barely got through, but it's a big graphic novel-sized book with Power Pack, so yay!
Yeah, we got through it years ago and then happily left it in our past.
Yeah, not great memories of Bill Mantlo doing that, but I kind of like the stuff that he did in Alpha Flight.
Well, to quote Chris, Mantlo!
Yeah, that's about right. I will say that I think the guys over on Why Not are doing a fantastic job, and we always are glad to do a shilling spot for them. Why don't you check out Jeff and Rick Present Unpacking the Power Pack, which is a much better podcast than these jabronis can do.
It's true, and I'm even all caught up on their episodes, so I fully agree.
Thank you, guys. Bye.
I do not endorse the message of supporting the Alpha Flight readers, but I do endorse the message of listening to Jeff and Rick present Unpacking the Power of Power Pack.
Thanks for that, guys. And listeners, if you want to send us an audio clip of your feedback, you can send us your file or a link to where it's housed at whynotehpod@gmail.com. We love to try to answer your Alpha Flight questions.
In other expanded audio, in this case video news, I was on a Substack called The Big Book Project with my friend Lori Feathers, discussing her Roberto Bolaño's 2666. The Big Book Project is a Substack. It's also a multi-platform approach to tackling, frankly, huge books in a community setting. So Lori invited me to come on to talk about the ending of 2666. It's a pretty good time. You can find it at the Big Book Project on Substack. It's totally worth signing up for, giving a listen to, following along. They just wrapped 2666 and are moving on to Agat. And I'll be jumping in, reading along with folks. So hope to see you there.
Why Not Read Alpha Flight is brought to you by the Excelsior Embroidery Company. Listeners can use the coupon code WHYNOT20 to get 20% off any 2 items, and for this month, Excelsior will be donating 50% of all revenue to the victims of the Hamilton, Montana chemical disaster, as dictated by the ruling in the People of Montana versus the Roxxon Corporation. When company is coming over, bring out the good towels. Excelsior! I don't know what happened in Montana, but Roxxon done fucked up, Tom.
Why Not is recorded in Chicago, Illinois, and beneath stately Baker Manor in a fashionable neighborhood outside St. Louis. It is written by Chris Baker, produced by Tom Flynn, that's me, with occasional cat noises from a cute chonk named Teeny.
You can find our blog at www.thewhynotpod.com, where you can find an archive of all of our episodes and leave us a comment. You can reach us on Blue Sky or Instagram, or you can email us at whynotehpod@gmail.com, and we would love to answer your Alpha Flight questions.
Join us next time as we dig into issue number 31 and continue to get our footing in the new Mantlo era of Alpha Flight.
And a visit from returning villain Deadly Ernest.
Ooh, I'm actually excited for that. See you next time. As we know, our good friend of the pod, Justin Trudeau, stepped down as the leader of the Liberal Party, which triggered a leadership election. Mark Carney won that election. And because it's a parliamentary system, the leader of the party, of the majority party, would then become PM. And it's sort of a quirk that you don't then actually have to be elected by the people. So Mark Carney doesn't actually have, he's not an MP. But he was the head of the Bank of Canada in 2008 around the financial crisis. He helped guide the UK as the head of the Bank of England during Brexit. So he's a very good pair of hands for uncertain economic times. And also in Trudeau stepping down, the massive lead that Pierre Poilievre, the head of the Conservatives, had opened up has shrunk significantly, simply because, frankly, the Canadian people are just getting kind of tired of Trudeau, including people within his own party.
Call us, Justin.
Yeah, we're open, man.
So are you.
So are you. But on top of that, Trump's tariff actions, general posture towards Canada has really, really pissed off the majority of Canadians. And because Pierre Poilievre has more than positioned himself as a Canadian version of MAGA, his numbers have slipped significantly. Plus, he kind of predicated his whole career, or at least this recent portion of his career, on both being a career politician. That's the only job he's ever had, which doesn't always sit great with some people, and being not Justin Trudeau. And so without Trudeau as the counterpoint and as someone now in charge of the Liberal Party that isn't really associated with Trudeau, his lead's quickly disappearing. So there had to be an election by October no matter what. But the general consensus was calling it sooner while everything was going on, and while the iron's hot was better. So they did that. And there will be a snap election April 28th, which also Mark Carney will be running in order to stay as prime minister. He will have to now win a seat in Canada. So he'll probably almost certainly do that. They'll put him in a seat that he'll definitely win. And, it's not a guarantee, but things haven't looked quite this good for the Liberals up in Canada for some time. And it'd be really good if they won and not Poilievre's party, because he's the absolute worst.
I did appreciate Carney's video with Mike Myers, the elbows up video they did. Delightful stuff.
Yeah, it's kind of wild to see quite quite that kind of rhetoric coming out of that party in Canada of just elbows up, that we'll fight, drop the gloves, all of it. But it's working, man. And it helps that it's also a true statement. They're pissed. And yeah, that's kind of exciting.
I had to explain to my 8-year-old what elbows up meant because she asked. I said, well, gloves down, elbows up.
Yeah. No.
See, and when your elbows are up like this, they can't hit your face.
Yep. I mean, frankly, keep the gloves on, and they really can't hit your face because they can't get through them.
Yeah, but then you can't hit them.
No, yeah, you can.
Yeah, but that's with the glove.
Those gloves hurt. I had an older brother who had hockey gloves at one time. But yeah, no, it's
no wonder he lives in Canada Junior now.
Yeah, he's up in North Dakota, which is a godforsaken space. Yeah, Canadian politics, man, they're way more interesting than you think they are, as I've been forced to discover through my various research in this show.
Well, Canada, we love you, and listeners, I hope that you enjoyed that because I feel better informed than I did before I started talking to Tom.